Alright, I am back once again, and as is pretty much always the case, I have a Nikon camera with me. Not a rangefinder this time, but my Nikon FM2T. The T stands for titanium. A camera I featured before and talked about a little bit, but this time I'm not talking about the camera so much as the lens. And this right here is a 35mm f2.8 lens. This is one of the very early Nikon models. I don't know if they really have a name. I think they're usually referred to as pre-AI. That was the general body style, but to fit it on the FM you need an AI series lens, and fortunately for me this lens was modified for AI compatibility, and you'll see it has the little shelf right here and the little tiny set of numbers, has the tab which has now become superfluous, but it does fit and work very well on the Nikon FM2T as well as the original FE that I have. And I really like this lens. This is a pretty unremarkable lens that nobody seems to talk about, but I've had this lens for a few years. I got it at a really good price, and I've used it a lot, and I just really like the look of it. That being said, I do have to say that a lot of the images that I really like that are taken with this lens were taken on color film and developed at professional labs and given more of a professional scan, whereas a lot of my other stuff is shot on black and white film that I develop at home and scan on my little Canon scanner, and I don't think that scanner is the best quality scanner on the market, but it gets the job done. I do notice that sometimes it seems to have certain issues, but I think that's a whole other video right there talking about the scanner. But this is a lens I have, and I would say this is my favorite Nikon f-mount lens. This is actually really probably the only f-mount lens I use anymore. I have a 28mm f2.8 AIS series lens. It's a lot more modern, has sort of the rubber gripping around the edges, and the back is more of a simplified piece of metal. It still has the original little tessellation tab for the F and the F2 and the Nikon mats, but it is a much more modern style of camera. I think it has a much more plasticky build, much lighter metals. And that is probably, in all fairness, a sharper lens, but I kind of like the effect of this one more. You get a really nice dramatic depth of field out of it. I also have a 50mm f1.4 D series, which is a much more modern lens that's autofocusing. I used to use that on a D200 I had. I got rid of the D200, but I picked up this FM2 a little bit later, so I used the 50mm on this FM2 for a while, and it works. You can just set the aperture ring to sort of the manual mode and put it on there, manually focus. Obviously the autofocus isn't going to work on an old camera like this, and I got pretty decent results out of that combo. But ever since I got this lens, it has been the main lens I've used, and I really like it. I just think it produces really nice colors, because like I said, I've shot it with a few rolls of Kodak Gold and a couple of rolls of Fuji Superia, and I think both of them are, they look very similar and they look very good on this lens. And I really just generally like this lens. I like a 35mm point of view. It's kind of wide, but it's not overwhelmingly wide. I think I like to shoot wider angle lenses, but I find with certain lenses, like I had a 15mm lens in the past, it was just too wide. You got way too much in there. It was always kind of a mess. I had a 24 for a bit and I liked it, but again, it was just a bit too wide. 28s, I like those a lot because they're wide enough to get a pretty big scene, but not too... They give you enough, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I find 35s to be a little bit more appealing sometimes because, again, they give you a little wider than average point of view, but it's not too wide because I found with 28s they work pretty well, but I do a lot of landscape type photos and kind of things of that nature. I like big scenes a lot of times, and if you're doing something more along the lines of well, pretty much anything else, to be blunt, I think a 35mm lens can be a lot more effective because that slightly narrower point of view, it just brings the focus of the image together because you can use this as a portrait lens to a certain extent. You can use it as a landscape lens. You can use it for a lot of close-up work. It focuses very close. It focuses down to about a foot, a little under a foot, and that foot is actually measured from the focal plane back here, so that little spot right there. So that means you can get stuff to within just a few inches of the actual lens, which is pretty close, even by modern standards. That is one thing I like about SLRs over rangefinders is that you can always get much closer focus. Even on the telephoto lenses, where on like the rangefinder cameras, if you have a 105, their focusing range is something like a 4-foot minimum, 4.5-foot minimum. On the f-mount cameras, it's still a couple of feet, but it's only maybe 3 feet or so. So there's one big benefit to that. The close focusing is always something I really like, and that is something I keep in mind, and that is one of my big qualms I've mentioned again and again with the Nikon rangefinders that I don't really have with this camera lens combo. And I really like this camera. I love the fact that it has a built-in meter. I really like my Nikon rangefinders and I like the lenses, but having a built-in meter just right there in the viewfinder is so convenient. And you don't get that on the Nikon rangefinders, and it's not the end of the world. You get used to it pretty quickly, but it can be a bit of a frustration sometimes. And I really do enjoy having the built-in light meter. I'll talk about the camera a little bit. I kind of talked about the FM2 before in my FM2 versus FE video, and I personally prefer the FM2. I said that before in the video, but I just think it's kind of important to stress that again. It does have faster shutter speeds than a lot of the FE models, which, well, that's not always true. I think the FE2 actually has the same shutter speeds as the FM2, but the FM2 is a lot faster than the original FM and the original FE. And these Nikon cameras are a lot faster than most other cameras on the market because they both go up to 1/4000th of a second. That's the FM2 and the FE2. Whereas other cameras of the time generally only go up to about 1,000th of a second. Sometimes they only go up to 1/500th of a second. There are certain high-end models like the Canon, I think it's the Canon F1, would go up to 1/2000th of a second, but even the Nikon F3, which is often hailed as being one of the great cameras that everybody loves, that's so sought after, it only has a 1/2000th of a second shutter speed. It is nice to have those shutter speeds. In all fairness, I really don't use them that much, but I do like to have them. My favorite thing about this camera is it's fully mechanical. So like I said, you have the light meter and you have batteries in here that power the light meter, and that's all they power. So when the batteries die, the camera still works. You can still advance the film, you can still snap the shutter, you can change all the shutter speeds, and you can use all the shutter speeds. With the electronic shutter cameras, they basically die when the battery dies. You don't get a light meter, most of the shutter speeds don't work. You'll pretty much always get one or two backups. I think it's 2/50th of a second with the Nikon FE2, 125th of a second with certain cameras like the Pentax ME Super, and I think a couple others. I think some of the Leica M7, and usually the bulb function also works as well. But I just really hate that. I know a lot of the proponents of electronic shutter cameras will say, well, you put batteries in there and they last for a couple of years, and I would say that's true in some cases, in a best case scenario, but a lot of times that's not true. And of course, when the batteries do die, it's always going to be in the worst case scenario. It's never going to happen when you just pick up the camera and you're testing it at home. It's always going to happen when you're out in the field, away from home, and you don't have any spare batteries, and you're not at a place where you can easily go to a store and grab a quick pair of batteries. And you're always going to be halfway through a roll of film, so you're going to be afraid you're going to destroy that roll of film. And it's such an inconvenience that after you have it happen to you once or twice, you'll probably be converted from electronic shutter to mechanical cameras. So I just thought I'd go on a little bit of a rant there and describe why this is one of my favorite setups, because generally speaking, this is one of my favorite setups, both the lens and the camera. I really like them. There's quite a bit of convenience in here, even though it is an old film camera that's manually focused and manually exposed. You have, like I said, it's very easy to load the film. You have the light meter. It uses a flash pretty effectively. I don't think it has TTL metering, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look that up. It's just a very good, easy camera to use. Lots of different lens options with the Nikons. It's one thing I always love about Nikon is you have a ton of lens options, and most of them are very reasonably priced. And you can probably tell because with this camera I had this little lens cap on here, just sort of a generic made in Japan lens cap. And I did a little bit of some art, I guess you could call it. I got it was sort of a silver Sharpie, and I put this little text on there. And that is Japanese. I lived in Japan for a while, and I was told this is roughly my name in Japanese. The kanji meaning, I believe it's thunder and hermit. And somehow that translates to my name. I always found that kind of interesting. I've since been told by people that that's not an accurate translation, or that's not how my name would be pronounced, or whatever, but I don't really care that much. I think it's pretty cool, and it does have some kind of personal meaning there. It was a good friend of mine who kind of transcribed that for me. I also have this little leather camera strap. Just a pretty basic neck strap, but I actually made this myself. I always kind of like doing that. I have a few of these I made myself. Not too many, but maybe 4 or 5. And they're all a little bit different, but I always kind of like this one. It's very durable. It's got a nice look. I think it kind of goes well with the camera. You've got this dark brown and this kind of champagne color, and I find it to be an interesting contrast. I'm sure some people would say it clashes, but I stitched the part there that needed to be stitched. I don't know what you call that. I'm not much of a leather worker, but I really enjoyed making it, and I think it came out really nice, and I've had a lot of people compliment me on it, and want to know where they can buy one, and I was like, I made this, and they're like, oh, okay. But this is one of my favorite camera setups, and I just thought I'd go a little above and beyond and talk about the whole setup, because this is one of the few cameras I have that really, I guess, has sentimental value to me. And this would probably be, if I had to pick one camera and one lens to use exclusively for the rest of my life for whatever crazy, unforeseen circumstances you could dream up, I would probably pick this combo right here. I don't even think I would change it out for a newer, more advanced camera or some like higher quality, faster 35mm lens. I think I would keep this exact setup right here. And I know a lot of people would say, why? It's such an unremarkable setup. And I just like it. It's pretty much pure opinion. I like it, and that's pretty much that. So there's a little rant about my one of my favorite cameras and one of my favorite lenses, if not my absolute favorite camera and absolute favorite lens. I'll include some photos at the end because I'm sure you'll want to see that. This is a really nice lens. It produces a very nice depth of field, like I said, and I've got some images that demonstrate that, and I'll make sure to include those. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I sincerely hope everybody considers picking up one of these cameras or lenses or the combination of the two, because I really enjoy them. And I think even other models, like if you really are married to the electronic shutter, you know, an FM2, if you got the money, an FM3A, one of the much more modern 35mm f2 AIS series lenses will provide very, very similar results. I don't know if you'll get the exact same like color renditions as you do out of this lens. This lens just has a really nice color rendering that I really like. And hopefully that will inspire some people to go out and pick these up, because I don't think Nikon 35mm lenses get a lot of love, and it seems like the F3s have been a lot more popular in recent years than the FM2s and FE2s, and I don't really fully understand why, because I really like this setup, and I don't think I would change anything about it. It's just about perfect, and I really can't think of anything I would do to make it better. And I know that probably sounds kind of foolish, but for a film camera, this is all you need and more, but it manages to be simple and compact. It really is just, it found a sweet spot of just everything. It's pretty lightweight, it's pretty small, it's got great ergonomics, it's easy to use, you got a lot of lenses to pick from. Pretty much all the Nikon lenses are just good, solid lenses. So there's some food for thought. Tune in next time for another video where I'll probably talk about a pretty rare lens I picked up a little while ago.